Hi, this is a video about Mars retrograde that starts on December 6th, which is Friday, and runs all the way through to February 23rd. So just before I get into that, I haven't been very active on YouTube for the past couple of months because I moved to Denmark and I've been settling into my new life here, which has taken up a lot of my time, including realizing that we had a mama cat living in the barn and we've adopted her. And, it's just the adjustment period. So I haven't really been active, but I'm going to start to make more videos. So thank you so much for being patient. So let's get on to Mars retrograde. Now, it runs from the sixth degree of Leo and it moves backwards all the way through to the 17th degree of Cancer. Mars isn't actually moving backwards in the sky, it's an optical illusion from our perspective here on Earth, but its energetic effects are very real. You'll even be able to see Mars more clearly in the sky. And if you look up, you'll see this red, ominous looking thing in the sky. Certainly our ancestors, even from civilizations that didn't use astrology, they would have looked at the sky and they would have seen Mars and thought that it was definitely an omen or a sign about something. So retrogrades are a period where we get to review, we get to readjust, we get to finally tune the things that aren't working for us. Now, we have personal retrograde planets all the way through to next summer. So between now and next June, there isn't going to be a time where one of the personal planets is not in retrograde because we have Mars and we have Mercury as usual, and then we actually have Venus. So what does that mean? It means that we're all going through this adjustment period. We're finally tuning a lot of things. And in many cases, it is going to involve a new life at the end of the retrograde, which is going to be in the middle of next year. We have a lot of people have been experiencing difficulties recently. And I think it is because Saturn is in Pisces. The ruler of Pisces is in Jupiter, and Jupiter currently is in a sign that it does not like to be in. It cannot express itself very, very well in Gemini. So our luck is hampered. And really, the kind of joy and optimism and all of those good feelings are, downplayed a lot at the moment. People are experiencing some issues. It may not be everyone, but I know from a lot of people that I have spoken to, in my clients that they have been having troubles. And there is that kind of pessimism. And you might have been feeling down in the dumps. And if you have been, I just want to say it's not just you. As always, other people, even though you don't know and you might think it's just you, which makes it even more difficult. Actually, if you ask around, people are having problems. So really we're getting into this remarkable period where everything is retrograde. And of course that means that there's some things that you should or you shouldn't do. And generally speaking, it's not a good idea to declare war during Mars retrograde, as you will lose. So obviously, not many of us are declaring actual war, although I wish some people would, to be honest. But it means starting things, maybe starting legal proceedings or an act of malice against another person. It will massively backfire during this Mars retrograde. It's not really a good idea to be starting stuff like new jobs or big life changes, unless it is involving leaving something behind, like something very bad for you, of course, then regardless of what the astrology is doing, you should always try and move forward away from that situation. But if you start something new, this Mars retrograde energy is going to be present within that project for the entire time that it's in your life. So probably be cautious with that. Definitely, please do not get married. Please don't get married between now and next summer because, like I said, that energy is going to be present within the marriage. Whether it's a shadow period or an actual retrograde, that's going to be something that you're dealing with. And astrology really can be useful if we take these things into consideration. So it moves from Leo into Cancer. And these Mars retrogrades, they happen every 2 years. The last time that we had a Mars retrograde, it was in Gemini a couple of years ago. That one was pretty intense. Now, right now we should be slowing down, planning new projects. So planning stuff that you really want to take off in your life, which is probably going to manifest better for all of us when Jupiter enters Cancer next summer, because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, meaning it's the best place for it. So anything that involves luck or good fortune, starting new projects, is really going to kick off next year rather than this year, because the astrology does not favor that. But it favors slowing down, getting on the right track in life, because there's a lot of fear connected to retrogrades. It is a time when things can fall apart, absolutely. But I always say, if things fall apart, it's usually for a good reason, because somehow you have got off the track of your life. And there were these things that you were supposed to do in your life, but for some reason or another, you've been stuck somewhere, or you haven't taken taken the lead or the reins in your own life, and you've gotten off the wrong path. So retrogrades are actually a time when we can get onto the right path again, which is uncomfortable, and it may take, things really fall apart for certain people before they actually take any action. So this Mars retrograde is going to affect the fixed signs the most and the cardinal signs. So the fixed signs are Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and Taurus, and the cardinal signs are Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and Aries. And we will be feeling that the most, whether it's your rising sign or your sun sign, you're going to have some big changes here with this Mars retrograde. So Mars retrograde in Leo. Now, Mars actually likes being in Leo because it's a fire sign. It has an affinity with that. So it may not be too bad. So it's going to affect stuff like creative projects, because Leo is a sign of creativity. And maybe there were some creative projects that you abandoned, or you haven't just quite refined your ideas so much. Maybe you don't have the courage to proceed with your creative plans, because Mars is about courage. And really, it's about the enthusiasm and bravery and the energy that we have within ourselves to tackle stuff like daily tasks and life changes. Mars retrograde in Leo is also about the ability to take control over your own life. And it's really trying to help us to gain more control over our own lives, and having the confidence to do things that are outside of the box, and to do the things that you're naturally gifted with. And instead of staying stuck in the same place all the time. That's what Leo is trying to teach us here. It's also about dominance. Like, you may have issues with dominance, with people misusing their power, because Mars retrograde. Mars is not weaker when it is retrograde. Absolutely not. You go and find a person that has Mars retrograde in their birth charts. They may try to repress that energy, but it will come out in a big explosion. And that is really what Mars retrograde is about here. There could be some temper tantrums. I'm just going to say that there might be some issues with dominance, and other people trying to come onto your territory where you have to defend yourself or defend the stuff that you love. There could be frustrations. There could be delays. There might be a bit of envy or jealousy hanging around the place, because Leo can be that way when it's negatively impacted as it is during a Mars retrograde. So Mars retrograde in Leo is probably going to affect the leaders and the rulers of the world. There's going to be some controversy. There might even be some violence or attempts of violence, because I'm probably thinking about Donald Trump again, because his natal ascendant is in Leo and his Mars is in Leo as well. But it can be any leader or person that is in a position of power in the world. There could be some smear campaigns or whatever. So we are going to have challenges, but also we are being encouraged to take our own leadership roles within our lives instead of hanging on to all of the news that's going on. One drama to the next. Oh, nuclear war, swine flu, or whatever. And it's one sensationalist story after another. In the meantime, we're like frozen in our personal lives, and we're not creating the life that we want. So that is something to take notice of. Now, Cancer, when Mars goes into Cancer, which is on January the 3rd, oh boy. Because if you recall, Mars was already in Cancer before it entered Leo, and the psychotic people on the internet were off the fucking charts. So we call them REM feeders, and they all kind of go off at once. They're like the domino effect of psychotics on the internet. Now, you want to protect yourself against that in any way that you can. There are certain people, and it's nearly always on the internet. I don't have people like this in my actual personal life. I never meet these people in real life. It's just the internet. And if you're somebody like a content creator like me, they're kind of attracted to you like bees to honey, and they want to invade your space. They want to, start smear campaigns and all of that. So they are likely to go off during Mars retrograde in Cancer in a big way. And I've actually even considered like deactivating Facebook and all of that for the entirety of the retrograde, at least once it enters Cancer, because of the reaction of people, the abuse, the negative comments, the bizarre and outlandish things that people that don't know you decide that they think they know you and think they can make up stuff. Or just anybody that who is a bit of a loose cannon and they don't have much control over their temper or over their emotions in general. They are likely to really seriously go off when Mars enters Cancer. So we all know people like that. Best to avoid them and then keep your own emotions in check. Mars in Cancer, and it does not like being in Cancer in the essential dignities. It's all about being overly reactive, caring too much or taking things personally when it actually wasn't anything to do with you. And your emotions are, you have an immature way of with your emotions, and you can't control them, and maybe taking it out on other people. We all might become a little bit more likely to do that over the retrograde. So it's really something to try and keep in check. Now, other Cancerian themes are the family, the home, security, mortgages, properties, and women, in particular mothers, because those are all Cancerian themes. We possibly might have some kind of conflict connected to any of those things while Mars is in Cancer, which then later on get resolved, one way or another when Mars retrograde is over. Thank goodness. So those are just some things to watch out for. But again, this is like an opportunity for us to make ourselves better, to improve our lives. And whether it is something about yourself that you need to work on, or maybe it's just people that you associate with, or spending less time on the internet, something like that, it is a really good idea to take a good look at that over the retrograde. period. Now, in terms of like health and people's physical energy levels, you could have some trouble there because Mars is connected to that. Mars is the ruler of the eighth house in astrology, which is ruled by Scorpio. I use traditional rulers. I don't use modern rulership whatsoever because, in my opinion, the signs only have one ruler. They don't need to have a modern ruler as well. So once Mars is extinguished, which causes the physical death, which is what the eighth house rules, that is about your energy that you have in your body coming to an end. So Mars rules the vitality and the sense of wellness that we have, and Mars also rules the first house, which is the ascendant, which actually is your physical body. So there's a strong connection there with the vitality, and you might find yourself to be a little bit more tired during retrograde period, especially as Mercury is also retrograde at the moment. It's like, wow, I've never seen so many personal planets retrograde. So yes, more sleep, rest, and make sure that your diet is good and healthy as much as you possibly can over Yule, over Christmas, that period when everyone stuffs themselves stupid, but you might find your health does suffer in a more negative way than it usually will affect you as we have a retrograde. Now, when Mars is still in Leo and it's retrograde, there is a risk of fires. So it can be forest fires in places that in the southern hemisphere, which are warm at the moment, like Australia, they're entering their summer period. There is a big risk of forest fires, or there can be a risk of fire in general, simply because Leo is a fire sign. So that's something that we want to keep an eye on. Now, there is also a risk of violence, in particular the USA, the UK. There is a risk of things kicking off, especially on January the 2nd. So January 2nd is when Mars is opposite Pluto again, and that can be an absolute destructive war-like force. So I'm not saying for sure like these disasters are going to happen. It makes stuff more likely when we have astrology like this. So January the 2nd and January the 3rd and January the 15th are periods that we need to be careful with Mars retrograde. So first of all, Mars opposite Pluto, it is about a huge power struggle. It's a clash. It can be about violence. Now, it's not just about the external world. It's also about your own personal life. So you might be in a bit of conflict with someone. It can be anyone, and you really have to stand up for yourself. And that is something I think that we need to do really throughout the world, is standing up for ourselves, not relying or waiting on other people to do it for us. And I'm obviously talking about within reason, like things that we can do, in our lives, is take a stand. If you don't like what they're doing to the food supply, then don't buy that food. You understand what I'm saying? So this is when things can kick off, January the 2nd, and then we have January the 3rd, which is when Mars enters the Cancer, and we have REM feeling and emotions all over the place. So January the 15th is another kind of red flag day. Mars is opposite the sun. So first of all, the sun is about leadership. It is about people that are in power, such as presidents, prime ministers, and that type of thing. With Mars opposing it, they are clashing heads. It's like when two animals are like fighting and they're using their heads. That's kind of what I'm saying. So this can be about opposition from others. It can be about violence and anger, and there can be a blockage. There can be a real sense of frustration that there is this place that you really want to be in your life, and it's going to be different for everyone. But right now, you just can't get to it. Whether it's your job or a relationship or even your family or your home, it can be anything. There is this sense of having to put everything on hold. And that, of course, can lead to a sense of frustration. Now, that's the case for everyone. Well, a lot of people at the moment, you know, with new projects, not so much projects that have been going for a while. So I kind of go back again to what I said earlier about Jupiter in Cancer and it being exalted, and it's actually you're much more likely to find success during that time when it doesn't, Pearl Jupiter doesn't have all these restrictions and, you know, should it go this way? Should it go that way? It's like full on ADHD. So right now, no, you're not supposed to be making this new, sudden, like permanent decision over your life if you can avoid it. But again, if you're in a place where you absolutely have to leave, then just frigging leave. Don't delay for any reason whatsoever. So in the Mars retrograde chart, there is a T-square with Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn in Pisces. So with these are all immutable signs. Mutable signs are they are flexible, they go with the flow, but plans can change very quickly and you know, without much notice. And there is also that sense of like spinning your wheels and not getting to where you want to be. And sometimes frozen where you can't make any decisions. And if that's the case, then don't make a decision. And sometimes you don't have to. But there is always this sense of pressure in the modern world where everyone thinks that like all of these, the rest of humanity absolutely have it together. And they're making decisions like that all the time, but it's not the case. Sometimes we're supposed to be planning, weighing up the pros and cons, which is really what this retrograde is about, and the ongoing retrogrades all the way to next summer. Now, the moon in the chart for Mars retrograde is in Aquarius. So moon in Aquarius really symbolizes the ultimate kind of freedom for humanity and the freedom to be a part of your own tribe and to have your tribe's own unique traditions and culture, which of course, if you're from certain places at the moment, you're not allowed to have that. You know, we are having this sense where they're trying to erase us or like get rid of, you know, everything about us. So in that case, it's our duty to rebel against that and to be proud of where you came from and do small things where you can rebel against that. So that's really the kind of main stuff about Mars retrograde. You're going to find that people are more short-tempered. You are going to find that things like driving, you know, there might be more road rage, or there's cyclists on the road and they're too abreast and you're getting frustrated and angry. So, you know, someone takes your parking spot. But those are all just silly, like trivial things that we should just try and breeze through, because there is that kind of boiling Mars energy. As well as that, we've had loads of solar flares, and I think they're a huge deal, actually. The solar flares that we've been having have been making people more psychotic also, and probably have a lot more negative effects than what they're actually letting on. In fact, it can be an actual radiation that's coming. And they say, oh no, it doesn't affect humans in the slightest, but then it can knock out an entire power grid. So I find that quite difficult to believe. And I noticed that when we have a really big solar flare or solar storm, that a lot of people have insomnia and they find it difficult to fall asleep. And there is that kind of feeling of being wired, like you feel absolutely wired and you can't relax or fall asleep. So yeah, kind of stressful. And of course, our nervous systems are under immense pressure at the moment. And we hear a lot about Pluto in Aquarius. It's like the main, you know, astrology forums everywhere. Everyone is obsessed with Pluto, which is kind of like an overrated planet in astrology, in my opinion. It's a dwarf planet. The reason why people's nervous systems are stressed and are under attack is because of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in Aquarius that we had in 2020. And that conjunction, it's known as a great conjunction in astrology. It actually affects like the next 20 years, so until 2040. And that is ongoing in the background, and that's a very strong influence, stronger than a lot of things that are happening. And it will bring about changes on a societal and on a global level. You know, let's face it, it is kind of a globe. The world has become much smaller because of technology and knowing about everything that's happening all over the world. That in itself is pressure on our nervous systems as well. So that's why I don't read negative news. I don't want to know. Please don't send me anything because there's something bad every day, and I want to be calm and relax in my bath with my Epsom salts and not know what else is happening in the world. So let's talk about some stars. So the stars, now Mars did not go retrograde on a conjunct a fixed star. And for anyone talking, like for any people that are going to say that the sidereal zodiac is the true one and the only one, you're completely wrong, because the tropical zodiac is based on the cycle of the sun. And it's not the same as the sidereal zodiac. It's never been the same. The ancient people used both of them. They used tropical and the sidereal zodiac for two different things. So you hear a lot of nonsense about that. So the stars, now, like I say, it's not going to go retrograde on an actual star, but it will pass over Castor and Pollux, which I thought was really interesting. So let's talk about the divine twins, which were hugely important in Indo-European practices and which seem to have kind of fallen away. Even people that call themselves pagan, they tend to leave the divine twins out of their practices. So these twins, they appeared in Greece, in Rome, Germanic and Vedic mythology, and it's really a core tenet of Indo-European mythology. Now, the twins are also reflective of that tripartite Indo-European social structure of the priests, the warriors, and then we have the commoners or the peasants. Now, Castor was human and Pollux was divine. They had different fathers, yet they always acted together as a pair. They did everything and they were inseparable. So Castor died, and then Pollux shared his immortality with him so they could be together half of the time every other day. Now, that to me really reminds me of our relationships with our ancestral gods, because it is only through our bond with them that we can achieve immortality. They are part of us, and actually one part of our soul comes from them, and comes from the divine. So they are a hugely important part of our lives, and we need to retain that connection. And if you remember, the divine twins symbolize young, healthy, masculine warriors. And we don't have enough of that these days. And actually, those young men are suffering a lot for various reasons. So perhaps we should make the divine twins a part of our practice again. I have statues of Castor and Pollux, and I've got them on my altar along with my statues of the other gods. Not just because they are quite prominent within my chart, but also because it's part of the complete Indo-European practice. So we should give offerings to them, and the Castor and Pollux were known to come to the aid of mankind, and they would respond to a call for help during times of war. And I think that we're in a time of war and we could do with all of the help that we can get. And there is this strange thing amongst maybe pagans that have come from some kind of like Abrahamic backgrounds where they don't want to ask the gods for help. And actually, it's in all of the old texts. It's in the Rig Veda. They're asking the gods in exchange for the Soma. And it's also in some of the Eddas as well. So there's no harm in asking the gods for help. I've done it many times myself. I've always received a response. And I didn't ask them for anything trivial. I'm not asking them for stuff that I can't get myself. But when I was in a time of great difficulty and need, I always asked them for help. I always got a response. So these Castor and Pollux are known to be protectors. They're also known to be the patrons of sailors and people that are on the sea, and they prevent tragedies at sea and protect against storms. So perhaps we could make a little magical ritual out of this Mars retrograde. Now, we're not declaring war here, so it's okay. We're just asking for assistance. And this is when Mars retrograde is making a conjunction to Castor and Pollux, which I'll get the date in a second. I suggest that we all honor them, and we start to make this a regular part of our practices. So the conjunctions start on the 23rd of January through to February the 2nd. Mars will go backwards over Castor and Pollux. You know, they're quite important stars as well. They're in the Gemini constellation, the two brightest stars there. So then we can strengthen those parts of ourselves and become more like Castor and Pollux. And that can only be a good thing. So that's really what I had to say about the Mars retrograde. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what this retrograde means for each sign. And the most important part for you to listen to is your ascendant, your rising sign, if you know that. And if you don't know that, you should definitely find out, because it's one of the most important parts of your birth chart. As the ascendant symbolizes change that causes us to grow, and how we deal with change and stuff that happens in life that really symbolizes a new beginning, which what could be more important than that? So obviously it's going to affect two different houses for each sign, because Mars starts in Leo and then it goes back into Cancer. So keep that in mind. I'm going to talk about the two houses and what it means. So you can listen to your sun sign and your moon as well if you would like, but most important is the rising sign. So let's start with Leo. And of course, Leo, this retrograde is happening in your sign. So you could have a bit of conflict. You could have a little bit of frustration, maybe some delays, or maybe some oppositions with people. You know, in particular, maybe some arguments or conflict within your marriage or your personal relationships, because Pluto has just entered your 7th house. So when it goes into Cancer, it's going to go, Mars retrograde will go back into your 12th house. This is a time when you have to be aware of hidden enemies. And it's people that don't clap when you win, but pretend to be your friend. And you could also experience a time when you are more tired and you need to take more rest with Mars in your 12th house. And you might just feel, oh, I have to sleep and rest and recuperate, and you should do that as much as possible. So for Cancer, Mars is going retrograde in your 2nd house, and you might feel more motivated to make more money. And you might experience frustrations and delays within your finances. It's a great time for you to be planning stuff connected to your money and connected to your long-term wealth. Then when Mars gets into Cancer, it's going to be in your 1st house, and you might attract some conflict during this time. You know, maybe people are targeting you for some reason. But it is going to be a good time to strengthen your physical body. That's what the 1st house represents. And actually, after this retrograde, you should be in a better position with a new life. It can be some big project in your life that hasn't been going well recently. You've been having a lot of problems and hiccups. But when Mars ends the retrograde period, you will actually be in a much better position, and those frustrations and blockages and delays will be over. So at this time, you should just be planning and trying to connect what is going on with your blockages and your delays and your frustrations, and find ways to manage those. For Gemini, Mars is going retrograde in your 3rd house, and that can be about your immediate environment, like your neighborhood, you know, local environment, any land that you live around. It can also be about your brothers and sisters and extended family members, and also your vehicle. So remember, a vehicle, and it's Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde. Be careful when you're driving, Gemini, or you're on public transport, because Mars retrograde might spice things up a bit there for you. And you know, be careful about accidents and things like that. Please make sure that your car is working properly and do not take any risks. You might find a bit, you know, you might have a bit of bickering or some kind of frustration or delay within your neighborhood, or you know, your siblings as well. So then when it goes, Mars goes back into your second house, you're going to be, it's going to be about money that you're focusing on, and there can be some frustrations and delays connected to money, but you're also going to be highly motivated to make some. And you are going to be, next year, when Jupiter goes into Cancer, it's going to be in your second house of wealth and finances, and you should definitely be earning more money next year. So don't worry if you're broke at the moment, it's okay. It's going to improve for you, I promise. For Taurus people, Mars goes retrograde in your fourth house, and this is really about, it's about your home, it's about your family, it's also about some of your ancestors and relatives and the roots of your life from your great tree of ancestors. It's all of those people that came before you. So Mars in the fourth house there can be a bit of frustrations or arguments or Mars-like activity in your home and with your family that can just get on your nerves. This doesn't have to be a huge issue. You know, you just have some annoying shit to deal with, basically. So then when Mars goes into your third house, it's going to be about your vehicle, your transport, and it is going to be about your siblings or even your neighbors and your neighborhood. There could be some problem there, especially with territory or boundaries, and you might have to enforce your boundaries. For Aries people, Mars goes retrograde in your fifth house. And of course, Mars is your ruler. Mars rules Aries. So this is kind of a big deal for you, this retrograde. Mars retrograde in your fifth house. You might have some issues with your children if you have any. They could be acting up, naughty, you know, they could be acting reckless and Mars and temper tantrums and whatnot. If you don't have kids, it's probably going to be romance or a creative project. It could even be a time when you have a bit of a fling, a sexual fling, because the fifth house is about sex, you know, like uncommitted kind of sex. And you could have a bit of flirtation or a Tinder romance that pops up during that time. You know, you are going to be feeling highly motivated to get some creative project off the ground, but you may not be able to do it all immediately. So remember, just wait until next year. Just don't do it now, just plan. And then Mars will go retrograde in the sign of Cancer in your fourth house. And that is going to spice things up in your family life, your home life. And you might have some issues with your kids, with your spouse, or with your family in general. You might have a few hiccups there, or you might have some things go wrong in your house, like the physical dwelling of your house that you don't like, some annoying stuff that happens. For Pisces, Mars is going retrograde in your sixth house. And the sixth house is the part of your chart that rules your health. And Mars retrograde in there, you could have some issues with your energy levels, your physical energy. And you might have something, to do with your head. You might be getting migraines, you might have headaches. Or you could have some other problems that affect your vitality in some way, or you could have some conflict over your schedule, and you might have to readjust your schedule or plan it better, especially since we have Mercury retrograde as well. You know, But you can get through it. Also, your pets might be acting up. They might be naughty. Maybe the dog started to piss on your carpet, or the cat has started to claw up the sofa every night. You know, Mars can be annoying, and irritations as well. So then when Mars retrograde moves back into Cancer, it's going to be in your fifth house, and that is the house of children and romances. And Mars is going to add some frustrations or irritations there. And you could possibly have a fling, or if you're single, you know, you might meet someone. It's very passionate, it's very Mars based, but really there's not that much substance behind it all. It could be a very strong physical attraction that you're experiencing, but that's fine. But don't expect too much of anything else from that. So for Aquarius people, Mars has gone retrograde in your seventh house, which is the house of your long-term partner or your marriage partner. And they might just be getting on your nerves a bit with Mars retrograde in there. They could be just annoying and winding you up a little bit, but you can get through that, no problem. This is, you know, this happens every 2 years, Mars retrograde, so it's really not a huge disaster or have to be a disaster, but we all go through those rough patches. It's really part of a relationship, and anyone that thinks that it isn't is really kidding themselves, because there are times in life when you want to murder your partner and they're really getting on your nerves, and there's other times that you absolutely adore them. And really, it's just a big circle that goes up and down all the time. And you just have to ride the wave and get through that as much as possible. If you're not married and if you're single, then you might meet someone who you think is potentially a partner, but they might have a Mars quality to them. They might be aggressive or really sexual, and you really hit it off sexually with this person, but they might turn it into a bit of a problem later on. So just be careful with that. When Mars enters Cancer, it goes into your sixth house. And you want to be careful with your health then. Be careful about accidents, because Mars, it can be a predator or it can be a weapon. Even a knife in the kitchen is a weapon. I don't mean you're going to stab someone. I just mean be careful when you're chopping, and be careful with hot water, and when you're putting wood in the fire and that type of thing. So for Capricorn, Mars is going retrograde in your eighth house. The eighth house is about it's about joint finances, so like a joint bank account that you have with your partner or anyone else. It's about money that you get from crypto and from trading. And the eighth house is also about debts and your sex life and the occult. So Mars retrograde in there, you could have a bit of an issue with joint finances. You might have some problems with debts or crypto, or even you're highly motivated to get going there with those things, and you're really doing your best to make money from those endeavors. But be careful when Mars is retrograde, and be sensible in those areas. If you're into the occult, you might experience some issues with other occultists. You might be in a bit of a magical war, or you could even be attracting some negative entities, perhaps in the eighth house there, with stuff that you're kind of tampering with. Now, when Mars goes back into Cancer, it's going to be transiting your seventh house, which is the house of marriage and partnerships, long-term committed partnerships. So they might get on your nerves. If you're married, you know, they might be annoying you a little bit. And that's okay. That's completely normal when it comes to married couples. Some days you get on each other's nerves, and it might last for weeks or months. You know, we all go through rocky periods. Everyone deals with it differently, but then you come out of that period and you go into when things are good again. And that's what we have to remember about relationships, is that they go up and down, and it's just a never-ending kind of wheel that turns, and you know, that's just normal and healthy. So for Sagittarius, Mars is going retrograde in your ninth house, and this is your house of foreign countries, foreign people, travel, your beliefs, including like your spiritual beliefs, your political beliefs. You might be having to defend those, or you might become super aggressive with those beliefs, or you might be reviewing what it is that you believe. If you're on holiday, or if you're on a vacation, or even if you are considering moving to a foreign country, just be careful during this time, because Mars can be about violence. Mars can be a predator, or even an accident or something like that. But by the end of the retrograde, you are going to be in a much better position with those things in your life. Now, Cancer, when Mars goes into Cancer, it's going to go into your 8th house, which is your house of trading, money from crypto, money from any kind of stocks or trading. It's also the part of your chart that rules joint finances. So that bank account that you have with your wife, there could be some issues with it, or there might be like a bit of conflict between the joint spending. Maybe someone's an emotional spender, with Mars and Cancer, and they want to go on a shopping trip and the rent is due. So just life things like that. For Scorpio, Mars is going retrograde in your 10th house. And the 10th house is your house of career and your job. So you could have an enemy there that's trying to work against you. So be careful with that. You could also be, you might experience some frustrations or irritations within your career path. You might be the one that's on the warpath with Mars retrograde in your 10th house. You could be the one that's pissed off with the way things are, and you want to change it, and you just feel so frustrated that maybe this change isn't coming now, but it will be there next year at some point. So when Mars goes back into Cancer, it's going to be in your 9th house. And this is the house of travel, foreign people, foreign countries. It's also law and the legal system. And it's also about your beliefs, the things that you believe. You could be reviewing that with Mars there. Maybe you are defending your beliefs or attacking others for their beliefs. And there's like this big boiling point thing that explodes at Christmas dinner. You don't want that to happen. But overall, it should be fine when Mars goes direct. So for Libra people and Libra rising, Mars is going retrograde in your 11th house. And this is friends and groups, organizations, and the tribe that you choose to hang out with. You might have some issues there with friendships. There might be some maybe sneaky things going on behind people's backs. Do be careful about that, and make sure that your information is correct before you proceed with any conflict. Ask the person directly. No sneakiness, no underhand stuff going on, as Mars retrograde can make that more likely. Get your facts right. You could have someone in your group of friends that you have conflict with, or just as a bit of a shit stir, and you might need to have a word with them. So then Mars and Cancer, it goes back into your 10th house, and you might have some problems with your reputation. Maybe someone attacks your reputation, or they attack your job, or you might have some problems within your career. However, Mars in the 10th house will make you super motivated to achieve certain goals that you have connected to your career. And just remember that because everything is retrograde, you're probably not going to see the results that you want until next summer, when you'll be in a better position. So for Virgo people, Mars is going retrograde in your 12th house while it is in Leo. So the 12th house is about hidden enemies that you don't know about. So you want to be careful about that Mars energy. Now, there could be someone working against you, or it could be your own mind or your own fears that are working against you. With that 12th house thing, it's very hard to tell sometimes, because it's not out in the open. It's just a feeling that you have, and you could be paranoid, or indeed somebody might be trying to work against you in some way. You might also be feeling demotivated, and you can't be bothered to do anything during this time, and life feels just a bit tedious. and really just kind of monotonous. Now, you know that you should be taking action. However, at the moment, you can't be bothered. You have too many other things going on. And really, the astrology does not really favor action much until, with big life projects anyway, until next summer. So you could have a lot of plans and that's fine. Make plans and then launch the project next year. But with your Mars retrograde in the 12th house, you might also be feeling irritated, which might be working against you, or a bit easily wound up, which you're not actually seeing yourself. Other people might be seeing that. Now, on the plus side, it's a good time for, I guess, spiritual work in the sense where you can use magic and use whatever system it is that you use to work through blockages and frustrations and delays. That certainly is good. Now, when Mars goes into your 11th house, when it moves back into Cancer, you might have some problems with friends. You might have suspicions about your friends. It could be all in your mind, or they might actually be doing something. That's something that you're going to have to find out yourself. Be cautious during Mars retrogrades. It is a time when we can get the wrong end of the stick more easily. Now, you might also notice some like dumb, stupid conflict on social media, because that's also an 11th house thing. And maybe like me, it's probably a good idea for you to deactivate your Facebook or any other triggering website that's just like doom and gloom all the time, or full of irritations, or people trying to push your buttons. If not, you should definitely limit that and just go off and do some things. But the 11th house is also about your hopes and the dreams that you have for your life in general. So it's a good time for you to actually write that stuff down, and what is it exactly that you want in life? Write it down, and then it will, it's on its way to manifesting for you. Manifesting isn't just a new age thing. It's real. And the more that you focus on your goal, the more likely it will, become clear and land in your life with a bit of work and effort on your side. So that is it, everyone. That is my analysis of Mars retrograde. And it may be frustrating. There may be a lot of delays. There might be some annoying things that we have to deal with in life. And I am wearing red today because red is the color of Mars. So I just thought, why not? I'm going to wear red to reflect that. But it should be fine as long as we recognize the potential for explosive emotions, and maybe even like, there could be violent things happening in the world and stuff that we don't like. Mars can be a predator. It can be about war. It can be a weapon, and it's also about people, our own aggression levels that we have in our body. As long as we're aware of all of those things, especially when Mars goes into Cancer, when people can't control their emotions, that might be a time to go to the beach and switch all of your social media off and just, drop off the earth for a few weeks if you can. Now, if you would like a private reading, you can go to my website. I am also a teacher of astrology, and I have taught many other professional astrologers. You can learn directly from me in the new year, obviously, so from January or February. And you can get a reading, and if you're confused about what Christmas present to buy anyone, you can get a gift voucher from me also. Now, I hope you're all keeping well, and I'm going to be back doing more videos soon. It's super nice to be back, actually. So have a great Christmas or Yule or whatever you celebrate, guys, and I'll be back soon.